Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Rocket Vlogs. In this video and this video series, I'm starting with this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how I build fiberglass rockets. Pretty much just exactly how the instructions of any Wildman kit will tell you, but I have a few little variants of things I do. But I'm doing start to finish basically, including the paint job. My painting has gotten a lot better in recent years, so I have a pretty cool paint job plan for this kit. But we are going to be building my 5-inch Wildman Punisher that, as far as I know, is still not a kit that you can buy, but myself and my friend Taylor had Tim make us a couple of them. But it's applicable. It builds just like the 4-inch and 3-inch and this Red Max and all these other fiberglass kits. Pretty much everything else is the same, so you can apply the principles that you're about to see to all of those. But first we're going to do one of the, actually I wouldn't classify it as probably the most important aspect of this, but it's kind of just become a ritual of mine to bathe all of the fiberglass parts to get all the dust and manufacturing stuff off of them before I start working, which if you think about it is a little bit counterintuitive because then I just immediately sand stuff and get it covered in dust again. But at any rate, we're just going to go ahead and do it. It's tradition. We can't start breaking it now. Hey, great news. We've already hit our first snag of the build. The coupler is stuck in the nose cone. So I've got a couple ideas here. The old twist and tug method with my dad did not work, so now we have to get more creative. So this took a fun turn. I've effectively destroyed my coupler in the process of trying to get it unstuck from the nose cone. So now I'm irritated and just trying to figure out what I'm going to do about this. Yeah, that's a bridge we're going to have to cross later, but we'll get to it. Alright, sorry for the background noise. Some neighbors using a leaf blower, but while this soup's cooking, I put the fins in there as well. That's really hot. Obviously this sink or even like a bathtub isn't big enough for a 5-foot, 5-inch fiberglass tube, so we're gonna take a different route here. Alright, so I think our easiest method of attack for the coupler here is just going to be to cut it down like maybe half an inch, if even that much. This obviously isn't usually part of building a fiberglass rocket, but hey, stuff happens, you gotta work around it. Shout out to my dad for getting this out of the nose cone when I got too mad and had to go pick up food that I ordered and forgot about, so gotta love it. So I'm gonna go to Lowe's, I'm gonna get some sandpaper, and I'm gonna go buy one of the iconic $20 diamond cutoff wheels for the Dremel, and we'll just cut this down a little bit. Alright, we're using my 1979 Volkswagen Rabbit as a shelf, one of my many project cars, but figured since I have to do it anyway, I'd give you guys some insight on how I usually cut fiberglass tubes. And a really good way to get a nice true edge is piece of paper. One piece of paper is not long enough because this is a 5-inch tube, but I just tape two edges or two pieces of regular printer paper together, just make sure the edges are lined up really nice, and then make sure everything overlaps properly. That looks like it should be low enough all around. You take one of these expensive bad boys right here, a Dremel diamond cutoff wheel, and we're just going to follow that line as close as we can. Also, wear a mask when you're cutting and sanding fiberglass. It's no joke. The dust from this stuff's pretty gnarly. Alright, this is a pretty straight cut. I'm just going to true up the edges a little tiny bit with some 80 grit sandpaper. All right, now that we're back on track, I'm going to start by sanding all of the components for the motor mount assembly with 80 grit sandpaper, as well as fins, because we're going to prepare them for their internal and external fillets. Basically anything in a fiberglass kit you're gluing together, you want to just really hit it with the heaviest grit sandpaper you have at your disposal. I think for my 4-inch one I actually used 60 grit. We don't have any, and 80's fine. So yeah, here's some sanding. A good measure for a reason to wear a mask too is I'm just sanding this all by hand, but I just press pause on the camera, and the back of the camera screen that's facing away from us is covered in fiberglass dust. So, and I'm sure you guys saw when I cut the coupler how much dust that kicked up. You really don't want to breathe that stuff in. I've probably breathed in enough of it in all my years, but I've seen the error of my ways. If you're doing internal fillets, this is not a step you want to skip. The reason being is we're bonding this portion of the fin right here, the lower side of it, to the motor tube. And once you have it installed into the airframe, obviously you're not going to be able to sand it more if you need to. So you want to scuff it up really rough, promote the best adhesion possible. If you don't go up high enough for the external fillets, that's one thing, because they're external, so you can sand it some more once you have it prepared before you lay the fillets, but the internal ones, you get one shot, so you do it before you put it together. Alright, so everything's dried off. I already test fit the centering rings, they both go over the tube fine. I need to get the Dremel out because I'm going to notch one of these rings for my shock cord lead, which will be made out of this 1-inch Kevlar strap. I'll probably just do like 10 feet of it or so, 2 arms lengths, which is you know, 12 feet-ish. There you go. So I just took the Dremel, notched out a little piece of it so I can slide this Kevlar strap through, and that's it. Alright guys, we've got all the supplies laid out for the motor tube, and I have the most important one. Let's do this. I know a lot of people take issue with building high power with CA, but really all CA does for me is hold stuff in place long enough for me to get it where I want it. So it tacks in my fins, it tacks in my centering rings and everything, but being that I do internal fillets, the bond from the root edge of the fins to the motor tube, I won't say it's not important, but it's a lot less important than the bond I have with my internal and external fillets. So CA tacks the fins in through the airframe, and then I have West Systems loaded up with chopped carbon fiber inside and West Systems loaded up with silica on the outside. So maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'll eat my words and this thing will come apart with an end motor in it. But for now, I'm sticking to my guns. Thus far, I've flown a couple pretty fast flights. And yeah, CA it is. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our centering ring that doesn't have the notch for our shock cord. That's this one. I have a 98mm aero pack that will be going on this, so we need it to sit flush against the end of the tube because it's a flanged aero pack. This is a nice straight cut, Tim. Nice work. Look at that. You probably can't see it on camera, but that's just like laser straight. Definitely better than the one I just did. So this is the easy one. We're just gonna I have this Ziploc bag down too because it's like Mylar. I don't know if it's actually Mylar. It's just a really slippery plastic and glue does not stick to it. I hate CA. I have a weird relationship with it anyway. I love it and hate it. I love it because it's easy to work with and it speeds up this whole process. Hate it because I always manage to get it all over my fingers, no matter what I'm doing. If I wear gloves, it makes it worse because then the gloves just start sticking to themselves. I'll be right back. we'll just let that dry. I brought this accelerator out. This stuff kind of freaks me out. This is already dry basically, but I just never want to hit the old accelerator until I know. Like, it doesn't matter, this is already dry, that's where it's staying. Ooh. I always want my internal fillets to be super tight and not have any chance to run. So the way I do this is I get the fin where I need it. I will put the upper ring on. But these fins can't be, if off at all, more than like a 64th of an inch. They're almost all just completely identical, which is wonderful. That's not always the case with kids. But see, this is weird because I always measure it and I always end up not putting it quite where the measurements are, just because I always want to use the fins more than the measurement of the fins, because I want it to be very tight. Okay, so I'm gonna do, I get really paranoid about whether or not it's straight. I know it is, it's fine. So what I'm gonna do is from this side, we're just gonna use a little bit of CA and let it seep in to the gap just a little bit. Do just a tiny bit so that we know we can undo it if we need to, but just enough to hold it in place. And then what I like to do is I take the airframe tube, mock it up, put all the fins in. I know the rings are straight, so as long as the fins fit, I don't care how far apart the rings are. I know it's roughly 15¼ inches. I don't care how far away from the end of the tube it is, except on this end, because that's where our aero pack goes. Precision is not the name of my game. Alright, and we're gonna get the rear centering ring right up to the edge there. Gives a very satisfying click, and I don't know, I'll get you a little bit of a close-up here, but the trailing edge is right up against the rear ring. You can kind of see it through the glass there, and then out front, let me straighten the fin out for you. We are butted right against the centering ring. And once we have some CA holding that fin in place, that is going to pretty much guarantee that we're not going to have any leakage when we go to do our internal fillets. All right, there you go. There's kind of our first mock-up with the fins in the tube. But yeah, the tolerance is super, super tight on every single one of them. And that's kind of my obsession with building fiberglass anymore. Just so that I've had bad experiences. My Red Max had a lot of leaking when I did the internal fillets, because I didn't inject them. I just kind of poured it in with the back centering ring off and let it roll forward, because I'd done injected fillets a million times. I wanted to try something different, and I regretted it immediately. So I'm gonna pull this back apart. We're gonna solidify that front centering ring, and I'll show you guys how I do the harness stuff with that Kevlar. Have that all solidified. Here's what I'm gonna do with this one. With the 4-inch one, I used the same 1-inch strap. I folded it like this and then impregnated with epoxy. That's probably fine, but I don't know why I didn't just do this. I'm just gonna tie a knot in it. And then I'll epoxy that all down. But even if the epoxy comes loose, like that's never gonna get past the centering ring. Easy enough solution for me. I don't know why I didn't think of it before. But that'll work. So I'm just gonna go all the way around this with CA on this side. Make sure we got everything where we want it, and then I'm going to epoxy my Kevlar in place. There's a list of repairs that I never ever want to have to do to high power rockets again in my life, and one of them is making a new shock cord mount for a rocket that lost it. So when I build my rockets, I'm kind of intent on making sure that this is going to stay there for as long as the rocket's going to be around. So what I'm going to do about that is I'm going to take our Ziploc bag from earlier. I'm just gonna lay a bunch of epoxy down underneath this so it soaks in. I'm gonna throw that over top of it and then wrap this masking tape around it nice and tight until the epoxy cures. And then, pretty positive it's not going anywhere. So we're using Bob Smith 30-minute 50-50 epoxy. Again, you'll find I have like tolerance levels of what adhesives to use for mounting stuff, mocking stuff up, and just like tacking stuff in place. We use CA. For stuff like this, we use 30-minute hobby epoxy, and then for big boy things like fillets, we use West Systems. I have air epoxy too, but generally go to the West Systems. I just like all the fillers they have. I have rock epoxy too. I haven't really enjoyed my use of it. I know that's a bold statement. A lot of people love rock epoxy, and that's fine. I just don't, it doesn't do it for me. No offense to the rock epoxy people, but it's not my thing. What I really like about using West Systems for fillets especially is when it has all that colloidal silica in it. It makes it really light and really easy to sand, and you can get the fillets the exact shape that you want. And if you've seen my other builds, if you go back on my rocketry form stuff and my recent builds, the Punishers especially, I got really like tunnel vision on the fillets looking perfect. And I don't want to toot my own horn, but they look pretty dang good. So West Systems for life, friends. Gotta love it. Get epoxy over everything all the time. Now we got 30 minutes to kill. Tell me about your day. All right, while we wait for that to dry, we're gonna do probably the furthest thing from an exact science that I'll ever do on a high power rocket. And that is, oh God, that's a big one. Look at that. Sorry, that spider started going right for my beer and I just can't have that. Anyway, I use these syringes that you can get for free at the pharmacy at Walmart to inject my fillets. And I always try to remember what size I discovered is the perfect size. And then I always forget. So, we're going to try with this one. I'm probably going to do 4 holes. That should be fine. I've done less. 5 might be better, but I'm just gonna do 4 and possibly pay for my sins later. It's alright though, because West Systems takes so long to dry that I have plenty of time to rock it back and forth and get it where I wanted. Insert a picture of the 4-inch Punisher internal fillets. Again, don't want to toot my own horn, but probably the best ones I've ever done. So I try to keep it fairly close to the slot. think this might be the right size because that drill bit's really dull. It tells me I've used it a lot. No, maybe one size bigger. I think you guys get the gist. I'll just go ahead and do the rest of these. You guys can take my word for it. All right, to anyone new to the internal fillet world, the reason you drill the holes before you put the motor tube in, obviously for one, is so you don't drill through the motor tube. I've done that before, but you want to, after you drill your holes, take your really rough sandpaper and sand down all the backs of them. I don't know if I can really get it on camera all that well. If you look in the holes, you can see little strands of fiberglass where it's sheared from the tube. It's really easy to get rid of that. You just sand the backside of it, and then you won't have any flow issues with your epoxy going in. So that's what I'm going to do. Ta-da! Alright, so now what I'm going to do is sand the inside of the tube where the centering rings are going to go, and we're going to glue the motor mount assembly in with some 30-minute epoxy. I just spent a good 20 minutes or so sanding the inside of that nose cone and the coupler, trying to get it to fit properly, and it fits together like old Rocketeers will know the reference, but like an old Performance Rocketry gel coat nose cone. If it doesn't go in perfectly straight, it starts doing that back and forth thing, and then you have to hit it back and forth a bunch of times to get it out. Then the coupler goes flying across the garage. You use language that's not okay on your family-friendly rocketry channel. I always put it a little closer to the end of the tube than it actually needs to be. That way the centering ring will kind of pick up the epoxy and push it forward, and kind of gives itself a little fillet up at the top there. With one of the thin spots. But yeah, that should be right about where we want it. Make sure I don't get this epoxy on the fin. That's right about where we want her. Alright, the camera battery is getting very low, so for my final trick of the evening, I'm going to tack all the fins in place with CA, and then that'll probably do it for this video. I'm gonna stack it all up at the end of the video so we can take a look at it. I'll put it up with the other Punishers, but for now the camera battery's at 4%, so you're probably gonna get to see me tack this first fin in, and then, you know, I'm just gonna go plug the camera in right now actually. Here, I'll give you a little mock-up of what I did. You just throw a little CA on here, and then bam, and then I sit here for like a good 45 seconds to a minute going, is that straight? Is that straight? I hope that's straight. It looks pretty straight. I hope it's straight. And then usually it is. And then I do that 3 times, and then the fin's on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here you go. This is the Wildman 5-inch Punisher. We just need to do fillets and paint it now, believe it or not. I was just going to build the motor mount assembly and then just kind of got wild hair and kept going, so this is all glued in place. I got the nose cone fitting properly. At any rate, thank you guys very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. If you want to help me get this thing in the air and fly some other big dumb rockets, I've got some videos coming up for you guys. I need to get my iris prepared for LDRS next year. That's the rocket that's all fiberglass and 12 feet tall. I have another one of those irises to build at my house. I've got a little John. We got my dad's rocket projects, my roommate's rocket projects. We got a lot we can do. I just don't have a whole bunch of free time. But luckily today I had the day off. I didn't have anything planned, so we came over here and banged out most of building a Wildman kit. Wildmanrocketry.com. I don't know if the 5-inch ones are going to be something that Tim offers. I'm sure if you ask him, he could make you one. I don't know how much it's going to cost. This though, the 4-inch Punisher and the 3-inch Punisher, both available on his website right now. You want to help support the channel, check out rocketvlogs.com. I got t-shirts available on Teespring, bunch of rocketry related designs. I kind of already have an idea for what I want to do for the paint, but if you guys have an idea, let me know. Obviously, I kind of want to keep the same theme going, but just as the main color, I have something in mind, but drop the comments. Maybe it'll change my mind. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next installment of Rocket Vlogs.